We are back yet again on the thiccmaninc podcast to give you our Week 5 predictions for the 2022 NFL season. And starting things off, we are going to briefly touch on the Thursday night game. Now, this video will not be up by Thursday, but Tristan and I will give you the prediction anyway, and we'll probably be woefully wrong. Now, given that the Indianapolis Colts are missing their best player by a wide margin, Jonathan Taylor, I think it's safe to say the Broncos win this game. Russell make it look difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult, but the Broncos triumph here in the Battle of the Horses.
Well, both are two of the most disappointing teams in the NFL so far. There are people that thought the Broncos were going to be competing for a Super Bowl. That is far from the case. Russell Wilson has looked like a shell of his former self. And on the Colts side of things, Phillip Rivers has overstayed his welcome in the NFL. He has not looked good. The Colts defense has not looked great. The Colts offensive line has not looked as good as we wanted it to be.
Phillip Rivers retired a long time ago.
Sorry, there's so many old quarterbacks going through the Colts organization. I meant to say Matt Ryan. My apologies. They're the merchant of old and washed up quarterbacks at this point. And with Jonathan Taylor not playing, even though the Broncos are going to be without Javonte Williams for the rest of the season, if Russell Wilson doesn't win this game tonight, I don't even know what to say anymore. Their fans have no defense.
Trade him if he doesn't win. And speaking of a quarterback which should have been traded a long time ago, but is still clinging on to the franchise which drafted him, we have the Green Bay Packers taking on the New York Giants in the London game of the week. And I'm happy that this game is being played in London because it finally lets Tristan watch and see how terrible the Giants are in person. This man has a very busy schedule, has a job, can't watch the afternoon games a lot of the time, and now he's going to be able to wake up nice and early and start his day off wrong by watching the Giants get embarrassed by the Green Bay Packers. That is, if the Green Bay Packers still didn't have the worst receiving core in all the league. The Giants are a particularly good team. Their defense is solid. Saquon Barkley's elite. And for that reason alone, I think they win a dreary match in London. This is going to be a stinker of a game, and Aaron Rodgers is a bona fide scrub.
I mean, Isaiah's picking against the Packers every single week. And the important thing to note is that Tyrod Taylor's out with a concussion. Daniel Jones is also dealing with an ankle injury. So there's a possibility that neither of them play this week, in which case I think the Packers once again get bailed out by the other team struggling with bad quarterback play. Although there's the potential for this game to be closer than we all expect, because just last week they struggled to beat Bailey Zappi and the not so great, even I'd say less talented Patriots offense than the Giants, because the Giants have Saquon Barkley, who leads the NFL in yards after contact, leads the NFL in rushing yards, and the Giants have the number one rushing offense in the NFL because of what Saquon has been able to do on the ground. Now, what I think is actually going to happen, if Daniel Jones even plays, I still think the Packers are going to win, and then we're going to have Packers fans once again saying, oh, we're 4-1, when all they've done is beat up on bad teams. And this game is going to be closer than it probably should be. The Packers are winning close games this year. They're not beating up on teams they should beat up on, but I do think they win this one closely.
So little faith in the G-men. It's really disappointing. Now, on to the only team which actually plays in New York, despite the Jets and Giants being named after New York. The Buffalo Bills will be facing the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hey, and the Bills aren't actually in Buffalo, so, I think we should call them.
Well, they are in New York,
too.
So...
But they called the New York Bills.
They should be called the New York Bills. They're the only football team which actually plays games.
They're named after Buffalo, and they're not even in Buffalo.
They're named after a bison, son. Just stop being bitter about the Jersey Giants. On to the Buffalo Bills game. The Pittsburgh Steelers have let everyone down this year. It's been pretty rough for them. I think it's going to continue. Kenny Pickett doesn't look good. Mitch Trubisky might look worse. They don't know who's going to be their quarterback. They're missing their best defensive player in Watt. And all in all, Buffalo is just clicking on all cylinders. They beat the Ravens, who are one of the best teams, the hottest teams in the NFL. Barely lost to the Dolphins. Look like they could very easily go on a little 10-game winning streak right here. I think that does start with Pittsburgh. So I got the Bills winning. It's going to be close for a while, but it's going to get blown open in the second half.
I would not put it past the Steelers to win a weird game, because they always seem to win games that they're not supposed to. But with how they've been playing this season, I don't see a world in which they win. Their defense without TJ Watt is not good at all. They have that week 1 performance where they were on fire, creating turnovers, getting sacks. That's not going to happen because TJ Watt is not on the field. He is a game changer. And then on the offensive side of the ball, for one, their offense is not creative and their quarterback play is not elite. They have a rookie quarterback, or you have Mitch Trubisky, who is at his ceiling, absolute peak, the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. So not a good situation. You're going against Josh Allen, one of the most prolific offenses in the NFL, with your defense struggling and your offense struggling. There's no way they win this game.
See, now that you've guaranteed it, it's going to be a Bills loss, but hey, you and your no ways, your guarantees and whatnot. So much faith in yourself, so much undeserved faith, one might say.
And I think Isaiah is now campaigning for the Bills to be called the Orchard Park Bills instead of the Buffalo Bills.
I'm
Since,
sorry, the New York
they have to be
Giants
named after
play
the
in New
exact spot their
Jersey for
stadium's
tax
located.
reasons. It's not even the exact spot. The Bills play in the general area of Buffalo. They play in the same state, the city of Buffalo.
So do the Giants. They play in northern Jersey, which is right next to New York City.
They play in New Jersey. The Jersey Giants might be the most fraudulent franchise in all sports. Not only because they're mediocre play at best, but because they're mediocre naming system. On to a team which has recently moved and actually does play fairly adjacently to the city they are named after. The Los Angeles Chargers of San Diego are taking on the Cleveland Browns, and was set to be an embarrassing game for the Dog Pound. And if you lose to the Falcons, I don't think I need to provide much more commentary. You're not beating the Chargers. The Chargers are one of the better teams in the AFC. The Browns just lost to Marcus Mariota. There's not much needs to be said. It is going to be a rout thanks to the Chargers' elite defense and high-powered offense.
Well, I mean, you take a look at the Chargers season, and once again, it's going to be disappointing overall because of the injuries they've now had to deal with. Rashawn Slater out for the season. Joey Bosa out 8 to 10 weeks. Keenan Allen still dealing with a hamstring injury. So they're going in with all these injuries against the Browns, but on the Browns side of the ball, Myles Garrett probably still won't be playing because of that shoulder injury he sustained in his car accident. So both teams missing key players on their roster. And also Jadeveon Clowney still isn't playing for the Browns. So even though the Chargers are missing Rashawn Slater, the Browns are missing their best edge rushers and edge defenders. So at the end of the day, the Chargers are going to win this game because they have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. The Browns don't have that, and all the Browns have is Nick Chubb in an elite running game. After that, they're not that special, and I think the Chargers are going to win this game through the air because in the games the Chargers have won this season, they've shown the ability to throw to Mike Williams, to throw to Everett. They've spread the ball out a ton.
Nick Chubb, an above-average offensive line, and a massage enthusiast clapping on the sideline does not a winner make. But speaking of a team which is full of winners, the Jacksonville Jaguars are taking on the Houston Texans in a battle for AFC South supremacy. And I've got the Jaguars pulling this one out. I think they're a better team, have the better quarterback, better defensive line, better offensive line, I'd honestly say. I'm generally just superior in almost all aspects of the game. Maybe head coaching goes to the Texans, but other than that, the Jaguars are the definite favorites and should be to beat the Houston Texans.
The Texans have the worst roster in the NFL, and the only one that can compete with them for that title is probably the Chicago Bears. And maybe in comparing the two rosters, the only places where you could say they're better is maybe Brandon Cooks at wide receivers, the best receiver between both teams. And you said head coach. I think Doug Peterson is definitely the better head coach. He's actually won and gone to a Super Bowl. So I don't, there's not really an argument there for the Texans head coach.
Are you unfamiliar with Lovey's time as a Bears coach?
He did not win a Super Bowl.
He did not get carried by Nick Foles, but Lovey is a very
Nick Foles is definitely a quarterback that
You were
carried.
dismissive of Lovey when he was doing his workshop at the start. You're being dismissive of him now. Like, leave Lovey Smith alone, man. That's a good coach.
It doesn't matter. You're comparing him to a coach who also now got his second opportunity and has a Super Bowl on his resume. The other coach does not have that, and we're seeing him
by having
absolutely
a Super Bowl,
turn around.
Why
didn't you let me finish talking?
Why are you going off on this hatred of Lovey Smith, man? Is this a race thing?
Shut up. But stop talking over me when I'm trying to defend my point. Anyway, it doesn't fucking matter. The Jaguars are going to win this game. Trevor Lawrence has turned a corner. They have an actual pass rush now with the moves they made in recent years through the draft. And the receivers have been producing because Doug Peterson and that offense, Trevor Lawrence, has started to turn the corner. Evan Ingram even has made some plays.
A lot of argument for that pick considering we both agree the Jaguars are going to win.
Yeah, I don't know why you have to grandstand and defend a coach.
I don't know why you got to grandstand
gone to one
about
Super Bowl
your football
20
team's
years ago.
Name. Like, if we want to get into grandstanding, there are grander stands to stand upon grandly. Anyway, the Minnesota Vikings are taking on the Chicago Bears in a riveting 1 p.m. matchup at the Vikings home field. And look, it's 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins. Tristan alluded to this previously. He's probably right about it. The Bears have quite possibly the worst roster in all of football, have a bottom 3 quarterback, are just going to get beaten around the field. Now, this does seem like a game Kirk Cousins could lose. He loves taking clear victories and making them dull, monotonous 16-13 games. But I do think the Vikings pull this one out in a relatively comfortable victory.
I would like the Bears to win this game because I am kind of a Justin Fields fanboy, even though he has shown nothing through the first 2 seasons of his career. Every game he's started so far hasn't had anything really go right for him except a couple pretty deep balls and a couple nice scrambles. So when you're heading into this game and you have the worst offensive line, you have the worst defense, you have the worst receivers, the quarterback on the other field is competent and has an argument for a top 15 quarterback in the NFL when it is not prime time and he's playing well. So I think the Vikings Vikings win this game, but then again last week, they almost lost to the Saints, who were missing all of their relevant starters. So you never know with the Vikings. This is one that they find a way to lose, but I'm picking them to win.
Well, London games generally don't count, but I do agree with the sentiment. The Vikings looked very bad last week. Speaking of a team which looks bad on a routine basis, the New England Patriots are facing Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions, and this is a grudge match game. Matt Patricia is over there on the Patriots sideline, maybe calling plays. He's doing something over there. But the Lions Lions players who were with the team during the Patricia era are ready to get revenge on this man. They are going to run wild on this Patriots squad as an act of divine retribution against their failure of a previous head coach and solidify that Dan Campbell is in fact the guy in Detroit. Their offense is going to go out, their defense is finally going to show up, and it's going to be a great day to be a Lion.
They have the number one scoring offense in the NFL, going against the Patriots, who have not been good on any side of the ball, certainly not on offense. The Patriots do not have the firepower, especially with Mac Jones out, to keep up with the Lions offense, who's been dynamic with TJ Hawkinson, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we don't know if he's playing yet, but they've still spread the ball out to the rest of the receivers and been electric. Jamal Williams, in the absence of DeAndre Swift, has been very good. Their offensive line is very solid. Jared Goff is playing extremely well within the line system. So if you see the Dolphins games this season, it's been that their offense can't keep up with their defense, which is the worst in the NFL, but they're going against a Patriots team that doesn't have much of an offense. So they're going to be able to outscore them. It doesn't really matter what the Patriots are even able to do.
Yeah, the Patriots are just really not a good football team right now. Their fans cannot be happy with the progression of Mac Jones and the Bill Belichick-led offense. But there is a group of fans who are happy with the progression of their young quarterback. Young is in parentheses here. But Geno Smith is going to take on Jameis Winston, maybe Andy Dalton. He's going to take on somebody in the Superdome, and he is going to beat him. Because the Seahawks are firing on all cylinders offensively. They got good receivers. They got a good quarterback. Their line looks much better now. Their quarterback doesn't run out of the pocket and try and extend plays for no reason anymore. Their defense is deceptively good. They looked amazing in the opening night matchup against the Broncos, and they looked good throughout the season. And the Saints just have no one on offense. Thomas is out. Kamara's probably going to be out. Their quarterback situation's a mess. So this is a pretty easy one for me. I'm going to give the Seahawks the edge here.
Well, when you take a look at both teams, the Saints have been extremely disappointing, and some of that is due to the fact that they have had a lot of injuries. Michael Thomas now, Alvin Kamara, Jameis Winston. They've had injuries all over the offensive side of the ball and have not been able to reduce because of that. And some of that is also due to the fact they had a head coaching change. I think that is also a little bit understated, and it's been a little bit clouded by the fact that they've been dealing with those injuries. And when you take a look at this game, the Seahawks offense has been phenomenal. They've exceeded expectations. And on the defensive side of the ball, they're also not that great. That's why they've lost some of these games, like with the exception of Tariq Woolen, who's proving to be a phenomenal rookie and a phenomenal pick for them. So when it comes down to this game, I don't see a way in which the Saints can win because they just haven't been super functional on offense. We haven't seen Jameis have that big game yet. We haven't seen Alvin Kamara show that he's an elite running back in the NFL again. The only bright spot we've really had is Chris Olave is showing why he was such a high draft pick, where some people were criticizing him on TikTok. We know what clown that is for not being a good route runner, not being able to produce at the next level. So I think the Seahawks wind up winning this game.
Just the random fantasy baseball New Mexico slander out of nowhere. All right, keep it moving along. Don't want us to get the ire of that young fella and his editor. Next, we have a matchup between what would seem to be a relatively dominant Miami Dolphins squad and a Jets team which is going the way of all Jets teams and underperforming and playing horribly. And people are going to be shocked by this pick. I got the Jets winning this game. Zach Wilson is back, and there is an older woman on the market that he is trying to impress. With Brady's recent divorce, Giselle, however you say your last name, is available. And with that on the table, Zach Wilson is going to go out there and throw for 5 touchdowns and 400 yards against Miami's relatively stout defense. Paired with the fact the Dolphins don't have Tua, presumably, I don't know, they might try and stick him out there.
Tua's career may be over.
We may never see him play again. Dark thoughts indeed. But paired with that fact, I think it's pretty clear the Jets will win this game and Jersey will secure a much needed win.
Well, I think the Dolphins are going to win, and it's part of the reason why I was so confused why they did not play it safe with Tua after the first injury happened, where it clearly was a concussion and someone was even fired for it, but the Dolphins coaching staff decided to put him anyway because the doctors and whatever cleared him to play. they have Teddy Bridgewater. He is their backup quarterback. That is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL, who is has started numerous games in the NFL and is more than capable of winning games, especially when you have the talent the Dolphins have on offense. It is impossible to cover Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle all at one time, two of the fastest receivers in the NFL that both have great hands, both are more than capable to elite route runners, and they have a very solid running game with what Mike McDaniels has brought in. So I think the Dolphins are going to win this game. They have what it takes to get it done on the offensive side of the ball, and their defense is better than the Jets' defense.
So little faith in Zach Wilson. I get it, you're a Jersey Giants fan, there's a bit of resentment there, but it really is going to be a phenomenal game for the hand of Miss Giselle. And speaking of Giselle, we've got a matchup between the Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. And in a similar note to the Zach Wilson game, Brady is going to go scorched earth this week. He took Wednesday off, got his mind right, accepted the fact he could be living in a large house by himself, and now is about to dominate the remainder of the season. Brady might win MVP this year, honestly. He is going to blow the doors off Atlanta. Their defense stands no shot. Their offense isn't going to be able to keep up with them, and it is going to be a rout in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think the Falcons are better than a lot of people give them credit for, except for the fact that their offensive coordinator seemingly is not taking advantage of the elite talent that Kyle Pitts is, and is making fantasy managers everywhere absolutely irate with what has been happening there. But I do think the Buccaneers are going to win because they're coming off a loss to the Chiefs, which does not feel well, especially when you go into that game. You beat them last time you played, and I think the Buccaneers, I have all their receivers back for the most part. Julio Jones is the one that I think is struggling the most with injury, but Chris Godwin looked good last week. Mike Evans was electric. He had 2 touchdowns and I think 8 or 9 catches, something like that. So I think Brady's going to take over the game with his receivers and are going to beat the Falcons, who are going to be overmatched in their secondary and on the defensive side of the ball.
Without a doubt, a one-sided affair. Now, the Falcons do win this game. I would expect Brady to retire on the spot and go pursue marriage counseling. And speaking of counseling, Colts fans might need some emotional counseling after Carson Wentz went out and started playing amazingly the second he got out of Indianapolis, while they have Matt Ryan under center struggling for him. A smooth segue into our matchup between the Commanders and the Titans. And while Derrick Henry is an absolute force of nature, best running back in the NFL until proven otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and say the Commanders pull this one out. They got their running back tandem back, their receivers look good, Carson Wentz looks good, and their defensive line is fairly solid defending the run. Paired with it being a home game, and I don't think it's that competitive, but I think it will be low scoring. It'll go fairly late into the fourth before the winner becomes apparent, but that's just how all Titans games go.
I do not believe in the Titans, and they could be 0-4 right now, because when they played the Raiders absolutely blew it, did not play up to their potential, and they beat the Colts, which is their other win this season. And the Colts are one of the 3 worst teams in the NFL right now, with the way Matt Ryan has been playing, and all we've already talked about how bad the Colts are. And on Washington's side of the ball, Carson Wentz has looked very solid, and they have 3 elite receivers, or 1 elite receiver in Terry. Jahan Dotson over the course of his career may become elite, and Curtis Samuel has been very productive. So they have more talent on the offensive side of the ball overall, in my opinion. And when you look at the Titans, their offensive line has not been playing great. Ryan Tannehill is not that good of a quarterback. He's closer to Carson Wentz than a lot of people think, and they don't have many receivers. I saw something, I think Traylon Burks might not even be playing this week. So I'm picking the Commanders to win, and Titans fans are going to be coping once again, telling us how stupid we are for thinking the Titans suck.
Saying Ryan Tannehill is close to Carson Wentz, people think implies that Ryan Tannehill is in fact better than Carson Wentz. That simply is not the case. Ceiling for ceiling, Carson Wentz clears him. Right now this season, Carson Wentz clears him. The only thing which is a problem with Carson Wentz, questionable decision making from time to time, but hey, that's most people. And speaking of poor decision-making, the Panthers front office and their ownership have to feel they have made a poor decision, both in the acquisition of Matt Rule and the trading for Baker Mayfield. Because right now, the Panthers look like one of the worst teams in all of football. And they've got to take on the San Francisco 49ers team, which admittedly has been struggling far more than most expected, but is still a solid squad with Deebo Samuel and the left tackle, George Kittle. So I think the 49ers pulls one out, dominant on the ground. Christian McCaffrey probably gets 17 receptions for 42 yards or something to that effect. And it's not going to be that close of a game. 49ers, easy road win against Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, you told me last week that Baker hasn't been the worst quarterback in the NFL, when he has been the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Justin Fields.
He's been worse than Justin. He has been absolutely awful. I think he had like 9 passes blocked at the line of scrimmage last week, which is, that's not something you want to be happening to your quarterback. On the 49ers side of the ball, they're a much more put together offense. Their head coach has command of the team, something that Matt Rule does not seem to have. And their defense, like always, is very solid. So it should be a relatively easy win for the 49ers. If Baker's able to pull it out, I'd be happy for him, but I don't see that happening.
I don't think you'd be that happy for him, I'll be honest with you. You're slowly becoming an old Baker Mayfield hater.
I'm not a Baker hater.
But speaking of short Oklahoma quarterbacks who have recently been struggling, the Cardinals are taking on the Eagles. And some people are going to say, oh, the Eagles undefeated, best team in all of football. I personally have the opinion that's going to end very soon, but not this week. They got a better defense, their receivers are better, their quarterback has looked better so far in the season. Jalen Hurts is basically just a taller version of Kyler Murray when you think about it, who's not addicted to Warzone. Eagles road win, fairly simple. Not much needs to be said.
The Eagles have a very good defense. They're good at almost every single position. And it makes my take for a couple years ago of talking about how bad Howie Roseman was and how he was building the team seem so abysmal, because they have really built that team back up to relevance. Jalen Hurts is playing out of his mind. They have Miles Sanders, who dominated last week, and then 2 good running backs behind him. And they have 2 electric elite receivers outside. And they have a very good tight end. So they've been playing better than the Cardinals. There's an argument they're better at every single position than the Cardinals just because of how deep they are, and I think they win this game going into the Cardinals stadium.
It should be a blowout. The Eagles are a very good team, which will not be humbled this week, but will be humbled very soon. But a team which is about to get humbled is the Dallas Cowboys, who have been ranting and raving about, oh, we don't have Dak Prescott, we got Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush is the future, our team's so good, we can win with anyone. The Rams are about to remind everyone why they won the Super Bowl. Despite all their struggles, all the fourth quarter points they've given up, everything which has looked faulty in that organization is going to get rectified against the Cowboys. Matthew Stafford will spread the ball around, hit multiple receivers not named Cooper Kupp. Their running game is going to look solid. Their offensive line, with the exception of their left tackle, will get stuck going up against Micah Parsons for long stretches of time, is going to look solid. And the Rams will pull out a victory, a much needed victory to turn their season around.
I actually disagree, because the Cowboys match up perfectly, and if Cooper Rush is competent, that offense will win the game. The Cowboys defense is very good. Micah Parsons is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, and one of the Rams' weaknesses is that their offensive line cannot protect Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford is only throwing it to one person on his offense in Cooper Kupp, has 10 plus targets every single week. I think he has 10 plus catches every week. Last time I checked, he was on pace for 170 catches, which is absurd. The pass rush that the Cowboys have, the way the secondary has been playing, combined with the Rams' lack of ingenuity on offense and the tendency to only throw to one receiver and the inability to get a run game going, I think the Cowboys actually win this game. All Cooper Rush needs to be is competent on the offensive side of the ball, and they win, because I think the Cowboys defense is going to take over, and we're going to see the Rams offense be underwhelming once again.
Now, how would you react if I told you Micah Parsons hasn't gotten a sack in 2 weeks?
It doesn't matter. He puts pressure on the quarterback, and the Cowboys' front seven has been dominating.
I don't know, man. I think he's due for one. I think he will get a sack, but at the same time, I don't think that pass rush is going to be quite as good. It hasn't looked as potent to me over the past few weeks as it did the first 2. Granted, they were playing the Bengals the first 2, and everyone looks good against the Bengals offensive line, and that includes the Ravens, who will be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in a riveting Sunday night game, where Joe Burrow, who allegedly has played with 85 different concussions, where he was blacked out, will take on Lamar Jackson. And the Ravens got knocked a little bit off course last week. Not a high-scoring affair. Their defense played all right, but ultimately they failed to beat Josh Allen and the Bills. I think they're going to get a little bit of payback, both for last season and for the shit the fans have been talking to them the past few months. Bengals fans have gotten incredibly cocky. Their players are starting to get cocky, and the Ravens are going to remind them who really runs the North. Lamar Jackson's going to go off. Their pass rush is going to go off. Their defense is going to pick Joe Burrow off twice, and it's going to be a good night in Baltimore. Easy Ravens victory.
I mean, the Ravens are the better team compared to the Bengals. They are very close to being 4-0 this season. If they kick the field goal, maybe their defense holds, they beat Josh Allen last week, or they go into overtime and then it comes down to a coin flip. Against the Dolphins, they only lost because their defense sold, and their offense put up close to 40 points that week. So their offense is electric, is more than capable of exposing the Bengals defense, and the Bengals have not looked that great. I'm picking the Ravens to win this one. I think Lamar Jackson is going to take over. He's going to show the Bengals fans why it was idiotic to think the Bengals, just because they went to the Super Bowl last year, were the guaranteed favorites once again, and they were going to show the Bengals why a healthy Raven is something to be feared.
Indeed they are. And friendly reminder to all you Bengals fans out there, Beating an injured Dolphins team does not count. Finally, onto a game which will certainly count, though, for the overall standings of the AFC. We've got the Raiders going on over to Arrowhead Stadium to take on Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and company. And my gut's telling me to pick Kansas City, and I'm glad, because I'm feeling it with very spicy rice at the moment, which is why I'm going to ignore it and go ahead and pick the Raiders to win this week. The Raiders are overdue for a win. They've got a great offense. It just hasn't been firing yet. It hasn't quite been going. I think this week it finally goes. They've got Waller. They got Adams. They got Hunter Renfrow. It's gotta happen at some point. If it doesn't happen this week, I don't know when it's gonna happen. I think the Raiders are going to be the third best team in the AFC West, better than the Broncos. Actually put up a bit of a fight and knock the Chiefs down a peg.
Well, I would love to see that happen because I like a lot of players on the Raiders offense. I love Darren Waller. I love Davante Adams. I think I like Hunter Renfrow. I really like Derek Carr. So if they're able to put everything together and go into Arrowhead and put up 30 points, I think that would be awesome. Now, I don't see that happening because Josh McDaniels has not been getting things done with his offensive play calling. Their offense has not really been putting things together. And on the Chiefs side of the ball, they just put up 40 points against the Buccaneers defense. Patrick Mahomes has been Patrick Mahomes even with the absence of Tyreek Hill. And they are spreading the ball around to all the different pieces on their offense. And their defense has also been pretty solid. So combined with the fact that it is a home game for the Chiefs and that the Raiders offense has been dysfunctional and the Chiefs haven't been dysfunctional, I think the Chiefs are going to win this game relatively easily.
Every game is a home game for the Raiders faithful. That fan base travels amazingly.
Those were our Week 5 predictions. Let us know what your predictions are down in the comments below. Clown us for our Thursday night pick because evidently it'll probably be wrong, as it always is. And whatever clip we post on TikTok always somehow seems to be wrong. Like the video, subscribe, comment again what you think down in the comments below, and we will see you in the next one.